idea that I had for over 10 years, but I mean, I'm just a unlucky person, I would say. Never really accomplished anything in my life so far. But I've had this idea for the last 10 years, ever since I learned neural networks. Probably more, I would say. Yeah, okay, actually just 10. Um, right, so about 5 years ago, I tried, sending this idea to research, universities in Australia, but I didn't get the full funding. I only got half funding. I probably sent it to every university in Australia who I was actually living in Australia for a while. I had the permanent residency and all. Yeah, sent it to every single professor that was doing research in neural networks and robotics and all that. But I only got the partial scholarship. I didn't get the full scholarship, so I made a choice to sort of get back into the industry and everything. So this is the idea, right? It's about neural networks. It's about autonomous robotic navigation, right? So every single experiment, right? So far I've seen, what they do is they make the robot with the camera go, and then it'll bump into obstacle. And then as soon as it bumps into an obstacle, it changes the direction. They'll make it change the direction and move. So what happens is, for about 5-6 times they allow the robot with the camera to go, uh, detect the obstacle, look at the obstacle, bump into another turn. But maybe around the ninth or the 10th time, right, the camera captures the obstacle and then it makes a turn. Okay, so this is what they do in all autonomous robotic investigation. You have all these RoboStalker and all that, right? Sony and other companies sponsor it, and they have all these robot toys and all that, right? So they program robots to do this movement. But my idea was this, okay? Uh, it's like, why do humans move? And no, okay, actually, not just humans, okay? Uh, any living thing, right? So when you move, they move and they bump into something. Why are they turning, right? They are turning because if they if they don't, they are not able to fulfill their objective of moving, right? So what I'm saying is this, or what I told those guys was, you have to conduct experiments, design robots in such a way that the robot has to decide whether or not to turn or jump or go straight. You should not tell the robot to turn when it sees the obstacle. You should not program it to do that. The robot should find its own, make up its own mind. The only thing you have to say to the robot is you have to give it an objective. The objective is to move as much as possible. So that should be the objective. Whether or not the robot decides to take a right turn or left turn, or it goes straight or it jumps, or all these things the robot has to decide on its own itself, right? So the way you do it is you try to study how exactly what are the neural pathways for pleasure and pain in the human brain, right? The mechanisms, rather, the neural mechanisms for pleasure and pain in the human brain. People are doing that. People are studying that in computational neuroscience. You should probably get that out and then design your robot in such that you just have to give one basic. See, the ultimate objective for a human is to preserve himself, right? So to preserve himself, he goes and finds food. So to go and find food, he tries to move. So while trying to move, he thinks, okay, obstacle is not good. So all these things, right? So from a higher objective, everything else becomes derived, right? So this is how we should sort of approach it in computation. Autonomous robotics as well. You define a higher objective, and then every action of the robot, you kind of have to have a feedback loop, which says either if it's a positive thing towards the objective or the negative towards the objective, right? So that way the robot will associate the obstacle as a negative function to the objective, and then it will associate positivity to an empty stretch of space or things like that, right? So yeah, this is the kind of the idea that I had for robotics. I don't think anyone has done it so far. So if you think anyone is doing this thing, like, having a higher objective and then having derived objectives, you should probably send me the link. If it's in Australia, they probably stole from me, because I sent out this idea to everyone in Australia. Yeah, I've also actually sort of explained things in a little bit more detail in one of my blogs. I'll put the links for the blogs in the description section, so you can read about it more if you're interested in it. That's got a little bit more technical details, I suppose.